glad to see so many people showing up on this particularly warm day. My computer says it's 98 degrees here in Fort Worth. I don't know, maybe Robert will tell us what the weather's like where he is.
It is 86 degrees, so
86.
a little
That's
bit cooler.
That sounds...
We're 104. Actually, we'll get up to
Oh.
106 today.
It was 103 in Austin.
Wow. Wow.
Yippee.
Is...
Yippee.
Wow.
Here it comes.
Right? Records everywhere.
Well, it's not so bad in South Florida, I guess.
No, right? Okay, I am so excited to introduce Robert Mascio. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah.
Okay. Robert's been with FINRA for over 19 years and is the Director of Investor Education Outreach. In this capacity, Mr. Mascio cultivates and manages FINRA Investor and Education Foundation programs and partnerships related to investor protection and the prevention of financial fraud and exploitation. He also helps drive research surrounding financial fraud, the victim experience, and scam susceptibility, as well as facilitates FINRA's Investor Issues Committee. Prior to this role, Mr. Mascio held a variety of management and investigative positions within FINRA, including managing FINRA's Vulnerable Adults and Seniors team, which was responsible for conducting specialized reviews and investigations of senior-specific concerns, including allegations of fraud, abuse, and exploitation of vulnerable adults. Additionally, he serves on the advisory board to the Cybercrime Support Network and participates on multidisciplinary teams and task forces related to senior financial exploitation. Mr. Mascio obtained his MBA from Florida State University, an undergraduate degree from Salisbury University, and is a certified anti-money laundering specialist. And Robert, you are invited to share a screen if you like, and
Perfect.
I am turning it over to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Let me make sure I've got the right thing showing here. I will share my PowerPoint. And as I'm going through, if you all have questions or any comments, thoughts, feel free to let me know. Happy to address them as we're going through. Just making sure you all can see that PowerPoint.
Yes, thank you.
All right, good. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about kind of the more emotional side of financial fraud. So,
okay, Robert, sorry, just before, it looks like Shirley, do you have a question?
Very quickly, what when you were listing the credentials, sir, what was that? You were a specialist in money laundering? Could you
anti-money laundering? So
I'm sorry, I have never heard of that, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, so back when I was doing more on the investigative side, I held my certified anti-money laundering designation.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, some of the work that we do touched on money laundering, so it was a credential that was beneficial.
Yeah, because I'm Italian, so that's why I brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah. All right, so first, some of you may know who FINRA is, some of you might not. So I'm going to give you a little bit of our background anyways. So FINRA is a private, not-for-profit regulator. We were authorized by Congress to regulate the securities industry. We're overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission, but we are not a government agency. And our mission within FINRA is investor protection and market integrity. And we go about that through a variety of different functions within the organization. We conduct examinations of brokerage firms. We review customer complaints and tips that come into our organization. We have an enforcement group that takes enforcement action when warranted. Now, we don't have criminal authority, so We can't do anything on the criminal side. We do make referrals when something does cross over to the criminal side. In terms of enforcement, our highest sanction really is being able to bar somebody from the industry, essentially saying you're no longer allowed to be registered to sell securities. So that's FINRA, again, focusing on that regulatory side. And then the FINRA Foundation is a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary of FINRA. And we focus on improving financial capability for all Americans. And we go about that, again, through two separate kind of lines of business. We have one that focuses on building wealth. What can we do to increase financial literacy for individuals and help individuals have a healthy relationship with money? And then we have the other side that focuses on that protecting wealth. And that's where I spend the majority of my time, focusing on all things related to financial fraud, exploitation, what we can do to educate consumers, to educate advocates, to educate individuals that might have any kind of intersection with somebody who is being targeted and victimized by financial fraud. Now, our foundation, we're also unique because we do conduct research, and we use that research to really drive our programmatic efforts. So a lot of the work that I do and that I'm going to talk about a little bit today is really grounded and rooted in that research that we've conducted. So we have a lot of different research that's available on our website. I'll show you the link and that information a little bit later. But anybody who finds something that, oh, this is really interesting, I want to know more, FINRAFoundation.org is where we have our research library. All right. So here's kind of the state of financial fraud as we currently know it. This is based off of information coming to us from the Federal Trade Commission, and this is off of reports made to them by individuals during the 2024 time period. So what we know is that there was 2.6 million fraud complaints filed with the Federal Trade Commission, 12.5 billion in total reported losses. So $12.5 billion in total reported losses in 1 year. Of that 12.5, 5.7 billion were losses related to investment fraud. And investment fraud, that can include kind of those traditional Ponzi schemes, those type of situations, as well as crypto-related investments. So these numbers, to me, they're staggering. I assume to you these are also really large numbers, especially when we're talking about billions of dollars that are being stolen from individuals across the country. This is only the number that we know. So we've got the iceberg picture here, and that's really to show we don't know what's under the surface. There's a considerably large number of individuals that have not come forward and reported. And it's for a variety of reasons. It could be that they are embarrassed, they're ashamed. Maybe they don't know where to go to report. Or frankly, the way that scams and frauds are evolving, these individuals might not have even realized that they've been victimized yet. So again, that 5.7 billion in investment fraud loss, 12.5 billion overall in losses, huge numbers, but the actual numbers are going to be much, much larger when you take into account those unreported complaints. All right, so I know a lot of you all, you kind of focus in that elder area. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the role that age plays. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we have done a lot of studies around financial fraud, financial literacy, and aging. And older adults, they do experience some unique challenges, right? They, day in and day out, they're forced with making complex medical and financial choices and decisions. They might be facing they might be facing decline in cognition, challenges with their physical health, or really leveraging social resources that are available to them to help them age as they continue to age. And then if individuals do end up losing money, if older individuals are victimized by financial fraud, they have a limited time to recover those losses. So we know that individuals of any age are being targeted. Younger individuals are being targeted at a high rate. Older individuals are being targeted, and they're losing the most amount of money. They have the most saved and the most to lose. So fraudsters and scammers, they are going after them to extract as much as they can. But as you age, you have less time to be able to recover from those losses. So again, these are some of the unique challenges that older adults face. And I mentioned some of the research that we've done around older adults and financial decision making. Anybody that wants a little bit more detail on some of these, again, FINRAFoundation.org has our research library, and a lot of this this information is contained there. But some of the things that we know, when individuals experience big or quick dips in financial knowledge, so their ability to comprehend different financial situations, that's a warning sign that something more could be coming. It's a warning sign that they could be ripe for frauds down the road. It could be signs that they could be moving into that cognition decline. Social factors also matter. We know that our social networks really help us as individuals, and individuals that have strong social connections are often better protected when faced with potential scams or fraud opportunities. The way that we think and our perception of what we know about finance, if we have a mismatch between what we think we know and what we actually know, that can ultimately impact our financial outcomes. Financial fragility, that inability to come up with, say, $2,000 to meet an emergency need, or living paycheck to paycheck, causes individuals to be ripe for scams. And oftentimes when we're faced with emotions and that fight or flight instinct, our judgment can get clouded. When we're put in a situation where we're reacting emotionally, our judgment can get clouded and our decision making can get skewed. So those are, again, just a couple highlights from some of the research that we've done. If you want more information on any of those, feel free to check them out on our website. All right, so that's setting the stage, talking a little bit about what we currently know about the landscape, talking about what some of the factors are that might cause an individual to be victimized by a financial fraud. But I really wanted to focus on the after the scam. So after the scam happens, what's next? We often focus on the dollar amount, how much money was lost. And I did it at the beginning of this session. I talked about the amount of money that was that 12.5 billion that was lost to frauds and scams, right? We talk about the amount, the money lost, but that is not the only impact. That's not the only loss that individuals who have been targeted and victimized by financial fraud face. So some of those non-financial costs, they show up in things like severe stress, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, depression. And we did a study, the FINRA Foundation, where we were able to identify that nearly 2 in 3 victims of financial fraud reported experiencing one of those non-financial costs associated with fraud. And these, again, these aren't just, one day of bad sleep. This is to a chronic level. This is significant amounts of stress, anxiety, depression. So that non-financial cost, that emotional impact, is so important, especially as we're interacting with and we're trying to support older individuals. Knowledge of that non-financial cost is so important. It's also important to remember that it's not your fraud.
Looks like Shirley has a question.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Yes, excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, I'd just like to say I've also seen the rates of suicide go up.
Yes.
With this happening to someone as well.
Yep. You're absolutely right. There's an increasing number, and I don't have specific numbers, and I don't know of anybody that does have specific numbers, but the individuals that are dying by suicide are definitely on the rise, and we're hearing it. I mean, again, this isn't just an older individual issue. There's a significant increase in younger individuals that are dying by suicide because they feel threatened. They don't see any other way out. And a lot of times it's associated with sextortion type of instances.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Death by suicide is increasing and often tied to these emotional impacts. And feel free. So I have 2 screens up here. So I'm looking at the PowerPoint. I can't see the hands. So again, feel free to just throw me off and jump in if there are questions. I might not see them over on the tiny little strip on the side. So back to this is not your fraud. everybody can withstand certain amounts of stress and trauma. And what impacts one individual might not impact another. So when you're working with an individual that has been victimized, it's important to remember that it's not your fraud. So what might not seem like a traumatic instance to you could be extremely traumatic to the person that you're working with, the person that you're interacting with. And again, when you have that fraud trauma, it throws our ability to withstand stress. So instead of having a healthy relationship with stress, trauma causes stress to pike and valley. So when you're interacting with somebody who has gone through that traumatic experience, and yes, financial fraud is traumatic, it's extremely helpful to remember that they could maybe distrust individuals. So when you first sit down and talk to somebody, they might distrust you, right? And you have to work to kind of overcome that and remember that it's not your fraud. You didn't go through it, the person you're working with did, and you have to meet them where they are on that spectrum of trauma. All right, so I already answered this. Is fraud victimization traumatic? And I would absolutely say yes. One of the partners that we work with through the FINRA Foundation is an organization called Give an Hour. And Give an Hour is a national nonprofit that really focuses on mental health. They provide support groups and mental health training for a lot of different disciplines, mass violence, law enforcement trauma, things along those lines, veterans. We partnered with them to really kind of lean into the mental health side of financial fraud. Because from our research, we've known that fraud is traumatic, but there isn't a lot of support out there for individuals that have been victimized by financial fraud. So we partnered with Give an Hour to really kind of focus on that mental health impact of financial fraud. And when we first started working, we did a social media scrape. So what we did is we went through all kinds of different online content. We used an outsourced vendor who helped us with this, and they combed through all these postings online of individuals who had reported that they've been victimized by financial fraud. So we scraped through all those posts and we tried to identify emotions that they were feeling. And that's what this chart here represents. So from that 0 to 3 months post fraud, some of the sentiments, some of the emotions that these individuals were experiencing and expressing online were isolation, sadness, embarrassment, guilt. And you can see some of the other emotions experienced from that 3 to 9 month period. But what really stood out to me was nearly a year after that fraud event. So that 9 to 12 month period, people were still lack of trust, terror, exhaustion, depression. So it really kind of reaffirmed that concept of it's not your fraud. You don't, as an individual who hasn't experienced that instance, that trauma, it's sometimes hard to understand what they're going through. So we need to make sure that we meet them with compassion and that we let them have time to warm up and become comfortable talking to us. And remember that there often is that lack of trust, that exhaustion, that desperation. So again, almost a year after the fraud, we've got individuals that are still expressing those emotions. So this isn't something that just goes away. Once the fraud event happens, it doesn't just go away. It takes time to heal. It takes time to move forward after that event. Which leads to, again, making sure that we're taking a trauma-informed approach. And I know a lot of people, especially in the mental health or the social work, adult protective service world, this trauma-informed approach is something that's taught at an early age in your career. And it's so important to remember that these same principles, they apply to victims of financial fraud. And it's also something when I talk to law enforcement, law enforcement knows this trauma-informed approach. It's often associated with more of those violent crimes, but those same principles, again, apply to financial fraud. So we have to make sure that we're recognizing that there likely is an underlying trauma. So we go into the situation knowing that there is an underlying trauma. We look for the signs and symptoms of that trauma. So we're able to, as we're talking, we're recognizing those signs of trauma. So it helps us inform our questioning, our approach, our compassion. We're making sure that our organizations have policies, procedures, and practices that support this trauma-informed approach. And we're looking for ways to resist re-traumatization by asking a very linear question, by sitting down and say, okay, what happened first? What happened next? What happened next? What happened next? And I get it. As an investigator, I want that linear timeline. But for an individual that's lived through it once, going through that linear timeline can cause that re-traumatization. So we need to be careful. We need to make sure that we're meeting that individual in a safe space where they're comfortable talking. And sometimes we have to take a little bit more of a roundabout road to get the information we need, but it'll go a long way to making sure that person's comfortable and continues to cooperate. So as we're talking with individuals, we also have to be very careful of the words that we're using. And I'm going to use some of these slides to kind of show examples. So when we think about violent or property crimes, somebody was robbed or there was a theft, we often approach that individual with complete compassion, right? We look for ways that we can make them comfortable, we can help them out. We say things like, oh, that poor family, can't believe that happened to them. They didn't deserve that. They were such good people. What can I do to help? Can I bring you food? Whatever it may be, but we're looking for ways to make them, to show our empathy, right? And we do that through violent and property crime victims. And again, it hasn't always been like this. It's taken a little while for us to get here in some of those crimes, but that compassion is there. But it's not for financial crimes. So if anybody's seen any articles in the newspaper, online, wherever it is, where somebody gets the courage to kind of come forward and tell their fraud story, I often go straight to the comment section and look to see what individuals are saying. And these are some of the nicer ones that I've seen, right? I mean, there's a lot of really negative conversation. Again, these are some of the nicer ones, and these are not good. So how could you get duped by that? It's an obvious scam. How could you have fallen for that? You'd have to be an idiot, right? These are some of those comments. I would never fall for that. I'm smarter than that. I could see that coming from a mile away, right? Those are some of those comments. And we do this with our normal language, even when we're not trying to place blame. So the FINRA Foundation, we did a research study with AARP where we really focused on our words and changing the narrative when it comes to financial fraud. And before I started working on that, I would find myself saying things like, oh, well, they fell for the scam, right? Innocent. I'm not purposely trying to place blame, but by saying that somebody fell for a scam, it's implying that the person who was victimized had some blame in the matter, right? And they don't, right? We need to make sure that we're using language that does not place blame on the victim. The blame should be on the perpetrator. The blame should be on the criminal that is deceiving that individual. So the words that we use, they're so important. And the more we can use the right words, the more likely it is that people are going to be comfortable coming forward and telling their story. That unreported complaints that we don't know about, we might get a better picture of what the true fraud landscape is. We might have better cooperation with law enforcement, right? If an individual feels comfortable to share their story, they're going to be more comfortable talking to law enforcement about what happened. So our words, they really, really matter. And I would really encourage you all to be careful with the words and be conscious of the words that you're using when talking to individuals that have been victimized. So that leads to this say this, not that. And I have two of these. So this is the first one. This is kind of the general say this, not that. So we often say, well, if something's too good to be true, well, you should have known better. Instead of saying something like that, let's recognize that scammers use powerful and emotional tactics to manipulate individuals. Instead of asking somebody, well, why did you give a stranger your money? Where you're implying blame on the individual. You're saying that they willingly gave money to a complete stranger, right? That's not what happened. They were deceived. So let's ask them, what did the scammer say to deceive you and build that trust? So instead of implying blame and inspiring shame, let's do some additional work to show empathy and empower victims of financial fraud so they are more comfortable working with us and talking to us. And then this one here is that investigator's edition. So again, I come from an investigative background, so I think it's really helpful to have some tools that you can use, some language that you can use to get out of that standard investigative technique. So instead of asking, well, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Leave it a little bit more open-ended. Are you able to tell me more? And I know these questions on the say this side, they're not, it's going to take a little bit more work to get the information that you want. But if that witness, if that victim is willing to cooperate and continue to talk to you, I'm happy to take as long as it takes to get the information, as opposed to having that witness shut down and not be cooperating. So instead of saying, again, we want that linear timeline, start from the beginning. Tell me what happened first. Let's ask them where they want to start. Let them start where they're comfortable starting and put the pieces together afterwards. What happened next? Instead of saying, Matt, do you remember anything else? And one of my favorites, a lot of times people come and they report instances of fraud after it had happened. Maybe it's a year after, maybe it's 2 years. And our kind of gut instinct is to ask, well, why didn't you report this immediately? You knew you were defrauded. Why did you wait so long? Instead of asking it that way, I would encourage you to consider asking, well, tell me about your thoughts leading up to reporting. And so it's still the same question. You're still getting the same information. But instead of being accusatory and saying, well, why didn't you report this quickly? You're getting a better understanding of what led them to come in and discuss it at this point. So again, making sure that we're careful with our words is so important, and it'll go such a long way to being able to build that rapport and get additional information from victims. Any questions so far before I dig into some of these resources?
Shirley just dropped in the chat a question. Where is it? Can you speak to fiscal recovery for someone that has been scammed for money? What if they have caught the person, such as the FBI found them? Is there any recourse?
So when it comes to recovering lost funds, it is often something that is really difficult. And when I typically talk about that trauma-informed approach, one thing that I think is really helpful is to set realistic expectations. So if an individual has been victimized, they come forward, they're talking, they're cooperating. In their mind, they're hoping they're going to get their money back. And we know that it's often very difficult. Yes, there are cases where they could be able to get money back. A lot of times fraudsters spend it as soon as they get it. A lot of times the money is overseas. It's transferred to a different currency. So there's a lot of challenges with getting that money back to the victims. Again, it does happen, but it's really important to set that expectation up front, letting them know that you're going to do what you can to investigate this, to make sure that the information is given to the right individuals to investigate, but recognizing that financial recovery might not happen. But there's other ways that you can recover. You can start recovering emotionally, physically, maybe not monetarily, but it's really important to help set that expectation up front. Because again, that financial recovery is challenging. I wish there was a way that we could make sure that the money got back to the people that it was stolen from, but it's just at this point it's so hard. And again, a lot of these frauds, they're run out of criminal organizations that are often overseas. So these are organized crime rings that are being perpetrated from overseas locations, and sometimes there's jurisdictional difficulties, and there's a lot of different factors that come into play.
Right. Lindsay has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for the information. I was curious if FINRA was working on any initiatives that help with legislation. I know that regarding like crypto, for instance, there's been discussions about putting a limit on how much they're able to withdraw from the bank, and then it's held for a certain amount of time. These are just some of the proposed suggestions. Do you know about any of the solutions that may be presented?
Yeah, so FINRA, we are not a lobbying agency. We're not an advocacy agency. So we don't lobby or position ourselves to try to enact change in that regard. But I am aware of those kind of the legislation that is going forward. I think I know there's a few states that have started to try and put or propose to put limits on crypto ATMs. I think California is one that has, I think it's like $1,000 a day or something like that, that you can only withdraw or send $1,000 through a crypto ATM. But I do know that there is some legislation around that. We, as in FINRA, we're not involved in that lobbying effort.
Right. Yeah, Texas is working on doing that too.
That's
And yeah,
that's great.
Elva
Those
has a
crypto,
question.
yeah,
Oh,
those
go
crypto
ahead.
ATMs are tough. I mean,
Yeah,
they're a space where, you know, the convenience stores or wherever they're located, they have no oversight over it. And I'm glad to see that there's different states that are looking at ways that they can kind of focus on that.
right, right. So Robert, would you mind stop sharing your screen? There's
Yeah.
like a double screen of people.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to go through these resources quickly or?
Oh, sorry. Okay, go
That's-
ahead and do that. I think, wait, or Elva, did you want to ask your question first?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're seeing much fraud in the crypto ATM arena. I see a bunch of emails about stopping crypto ATMs in senior living communities, but I just wonder, I've never seen one there. I don't know if that's, if there's someplace else that would better focus our attention than that. Do you see much fraud on crypto ATMs from the elderly?
So I am hearing about it a good amount, right? And a lot of times, so in the past, it used to be like gift cards, right? So the scammer would say, go to the convenience store and buy the gift card, read me the number on the back. Well, crypto ATMs have kind of taken over that space. So a scammer will say, well, go to the crypto ATM, put in this information and send money to my crypto wallet. That's how the ATMs are really being used. And we are hearing about that at a pretty regular rate.
I'm one of the lucky ones that bought crypto back, and sold it at a 400% profit. I just sheer luck.
Nice.
But I remember using crypto to buy a Subway sandwich one day. They had a crypto, card reader.
Yep. Well,
Anyway.
congratulations on that. I mean, that's that's a good win. And when you talk to older individuals about crypto, many of them like, well, it doesn't apply to me. I would never transact in crypto. But you have to remember that those ATMs, they're being used to facilitate the transfer of money. So it's not necessarily to buy as an investment. It's more to pay their taxes, their alleged taxes that they owe. They leverage those crypto ATMs.
Yeah, and when I invested $1,500 in crypto, it was just because I wanted to understand how it works. How do you do a wallet? What is it all about? And I was fully expecting to lose my $1,500.
And sometimes that's the best way to learn how different investments work, right? Kind of go in and play around with it yourself. I learned a lot about the market when I was younger by investing in things that I probably shouldn't have invested in, but I learned quickly how different products worked.
Yep. Now, resources.
Yes, please.
All right. So this is some of the information we have available on our FINRA Foundation website. So finrafoundation.org/fraudfighter is all of our fraud specific content. I mentioned our research center. We have that. We have this Taking Action guide. It's a guide that we designed with the National Center for Victims of Crime. And it's an advocate's guide to assisting victims of financial fraud.
Hey, Robert, you're not showing us that screen that I think you are, that I think you are.
Oh, all right. Let me see.
Because we see the Zoom screen.
Is that better?
There we go. Yes.
Well, that's odd. Okay. Well, all right. So this is what I was talking about. finrafoundation.org/fraudfighter. So the Taking Action guide, some of the content in there, it's a little bit older. It's one that we're working to refresh, and hopefully we'll have that updated by the end of the year. But the content in there is still helpful. It is still good. So there's that's available. The Words Matter. That's that AARP project that we focused on, the Say This, Not That. We have our Fighting Fraud 101, which we've co-branded with a bunch of different states, and I'm trying to think if I feel like Texas might be one that we co-branded with. But it has information about different tactics that are used by fraudsters, and it has places to turn if an individual has been victimized. And then we have our securities helpline for seniors. So if you're interacting with anybody who has questions or concerns that are securities related, please direct them to our securities helpline. We've got individuals that are on staff ready to talk to folks, talk to them about resources available, take information, start investigations, things like that. So it's a really great resource to have in mind. That little QR code takes you directly to our website. That is a safe QR code. I know there is a rise in fraudulent QR codes, so this one is safe. Our investor insights, this is going to be on our FINRA website. So finra.org/investors is going to have more of our investor-focused content. And we put out articles that are written for investors. We take complex matters and products and distill it down to information that's digestible by the average investor. So some of the content, we've got articles that are written on relationship investment scams, support center ad scams, so a variety of different topics. And then these are some of the support groups that we've partnered with for victims. This one is the Cybercrime Support Network. They have a 10-week cohort for victims and survivors of romance scams, where there's a mental health professional that is on staff, and over that 10-week period, they work to overcome some of those emotional impacts that romance scam victims have experienced and help them go back out online in a safe manner. So it's a really great support group for individuals. If you know anybody, you come across anybody who's been a victim of a romance scam, I would highly encourage you to direct them to this website, fightcybercrime.org, and consider signing up for one of these sessions. And then I mentioned Give an Hour before. They also have peer support. This is more for just general financial fraud survivors, whereas Fight Cybercrime was romance. Give an Hour is more financial fraud generally. They have peer support programs where individuals can join. Again, this is facilitated by a mental health professional, so they're on staff to be able to assist. Both of these programs are done virtually, so individuals can be from anywhere to be able to participate. And there's also a few different flyers, one-page sheets on Give an Hour's website that focus on that emotional impact of financial fraud.
Hey, Robert,
Yes.
this is Elva again. On the given hour, is there a fee charged to the consumers or the people? I know that the given hour, I guess, is asking mental health professionals to give an hour of their time. But is there a charge or a fee to people who use that service?
There is not. So those peer support groups, both for Give an Hour and for fightcybercrime.org, those are free programs for individuals. There is no cost associated with that.
And why is it called peer-to-peer? I mean, that sounds like somebody that's the victim of a fraud leads then or helps others. Is that right? Or is it mental health professionals?
So it's a little bit of both. So it's all peers that are involved in the group, right? So if you think about like Alcoholics Anonymous or something along those, that's a peer support group. It's all peers that are going through that same impact. Now, those are often run by somebody who has experience in whatever that underlying item is. Within these fraud support groups, there is some of that, but there is a mental health professional that is helping lead and run these meetings. So it is more structured. It is more overseen by somebody in that mental health community.
Understand now. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and these are just a few other reporting mechanisms. AARP also has a kind of like a peer support model as well. They have a lot of resources, and you don't actually have to be an AARP member to leverage any of their resources. So always worth mentioning. And with that, here's my contact information, and I will hide my screen and take any additional questions you all might have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Robert. That was fascinating. I saw it once and invited him to join us to share, and I feel like I got even more out of it this time. It looks like Shirley has another question. Shirley?
Yes, it's really not a question, it's a comment. So a few years ago, I'm a licensed professional counselor and master's social worker, and one of my old colleagues actually she herself was romance scammed out of $75,000. And I just want to say that there's no box that someone fits in. You don't have to be minimally educated, that it can happen to anyone.
Right.
And that was a professional that happened to. So
That's-
just keep that in mind. It was very devastating for her for many, many, many years.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, these are not in the past we used to think, well, okay, again, that there was some kind of underlying something that happened. Maybe they weren't educated, maybe they had cognition issues or something along those lines. That's not the case anymore. These scams, they are so sophisticated
Yeah.
that, I mean, I live and breathe this type of work, and even I question legitimate and illegitimate situations, right? I have a very healthy skepticism at this point. And I mean, I'm not immune. It's all about the moment of vulnerability. So if you are in that moment of vulnerability when somebody pitches you, doesn't matter how smart, how educated, how much you know. Again, it's that emotional play, and it's hard to separate the decision making from that emotional response.
Absolutely. Yes, no one is immune. And thank you again, Robert. And Monica Horton with the Better Business Bureau says, we use a lot of co-branded FINRA materials here at the Better Business Bureau. Thank you.
Yep, Better Business Bureau is another one of the partners that we work with. We work with them to facilitate a fighting financial fraud training program for BBBs across the country, so they can really go out into the community and educate individuals about financial fraud. So nobody really wants to see me. They want to know the people in the community. So it works really well having that local connection.
Gotcha. Yes. All right. Looks like I don't see any more hands or comments. Last chance, everyone. Robert, you are welcome to hang in here and listen to our meeting if you like, or you can, take the time and do something else.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
I will stay on. I will stay on for a little bit. I'm interested to hear some of your conversation, but wanted to make sure that I thanked you all again for having me on. If anybody has questions after the fact, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have conversations after this.
Absolutely. We welcome your listening in. And of course, if you have any comments, feel free to chime in. Our next item on the agenda is our Texas Elder Justice Coalition Summit, which is Tuesday, June 10th. It's coming up in just a few weeks. And if you haven't registered, there's a registration hyperlink in the agenda, or you can go to the website txelderjustice.org and click on the event link, and then click on the registration link or the information link, and then click on the registration link. It's a little bit out there. We have some great sponsors, very excited about them because their sponsorship and support are allowing us to do a better job streaming the summit for those who are going to join virtually. They'll help us capture the content so that maybe we can use it in later situations. They are allowing us to provide breakfast and lunch, and it should be a really good summit. So share the word. I am also welcoming volunteer signups. So encourage you to follow the link to Sign Up Genius and be a Texas Elder Justice Coalition Summit champion. You just click on the link and enter your name and email address, just like that. And again, that link is in the agenda. And for those of you who are coming from out of town, there are a couple nearby hotels, Hilton Garden Inn, Fort Worth Medical Center, and Marriott Spring Hill Suites, Fort Worth University. Both of those links are also in the agenda. And the next section is just a few legislative updates. As Elva mentioned, we have been watching the crypto ATM legislation, and the Senate bill is on the intent calendar, and the House bill has passed the House and referred to the Senate Business and Commerce Committee. Texas Appleseed has requested that we oppose House Bill 3466, and I saw Ann on here. Are you still on here, Ann? Did you want to say anything? Excuse me, I'm losing my voice.
Yeah.
I know she was on here a minute ago. Okay. That bill is trying to remove some protections from door-to-door sales, and it's been passed by the House, and it is also the Senate Business and Commerce Committee. And then it's Judge Veronica Vasquez. There she is. Did you want to talk about the bill that you were looking for support of, 2933?
Yes, so it's SB 2933, and it was heard in the House this morning. Of course, they haven't voted on it yet. It's by Senator Menendez, and what this would do is require elder abuse training. So right now, probate court judges used to be exempt from having to take domestic violence hours. Last legislative session, so there's 12 domestic violence hours that we have to take. I think it's 12. I know that 4 of those hours can be on various topics, including, child abuse, partner intimacy violence, all these other things that are under the umbrella of domestic violence. Last legislative session, all judges are now required to take domestic violence training. And so what this bill, when I talked to my colleagues, the other probate court judges throughout the state, we talked, well, if we are having to, my suggestion was if we are having to take domestic violence hours, part of that domestic violence should be education about elder abuse and exploitation. So they agreed, and I asked Senator Menendez if he could, I drafted the bill, asked Senator Menendez if he could carry the bill. He said yes. So it has passed the Senate. It has passed through committee. It has passed the Senate. Now it's over to the House. It's at the House Civil Jurisprudence Committee. And this morning was the hearing. Chairman Leach is actually going to be carrying the bill on the House side. And so it hasn't made it out of committee today, but today was the actual hearing on it. So we're waiting for a couple more days to see if it passes out. I can imagine AARP has been very helpful in meeting with the different legislators that are on the committee to ask them to pass this bill. So I imagine there won't be much opposition to it. Of course, we never know. There's always one, right? So, but we don't imagine there's going to be a lot of opposition, but I would just like the support when it comes to the House floor so that we can get it passed.
Yes, thank you for that update.
And it would be educating all judges, because all judges are required to take domestic violence training. So this would just be an option for judges that are required to take domestic violence. They can also learn about elder abuse and exploitation. In addition, if they wanted to learn about child abuse or intimate partner abuse.
Yeah. I was thinking also there's a lot of other people that need to be trained on elder abuse and financial exploitation. It'd be nice to tag them all on there.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And our next item is our committee updates, and I will go through this quickly because we have about 9 minutes left. So I'm going to skip the first one. I wanted to get some feedback on what we might want to do in September, but I will hold off on that. We have our speakers planned, and then our recognition award for the summit is Judge Veronica Vasquez, who just spoke. I'm very excited to honor her at the summit. It was a very, very, lots of talented and important people, but she rose above the rest. So glad that we'll be able to honor Judge Vasquez. The older adult and
Thank you.
education.
It's an honor, so thank you.
You're welcome. Older adult education and services committee will be coordinating the statewide World Elder Abuse Awareness Day efforts. I will send out some more information on our final planning meeting, probably next week or the week out, in a couple weeks. The link in the agenda has social media templates, event. You can enter in your event to add to the list of events that's being hosted for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and you can also use their graphics. The What to Do wallet card pilot, I did get some of those printed and shared around and got mostly, well, I guess except for the logo was cut off, which I fixed. Got positive feedback on the wallet card, which was an attachment in the email with the agenda. And then I added the Canva link in the agenda as well, in case anybody wants to adjust it or print it themselves. The collaboration committee finalized the roster, which was also attached. The password is justice with a capital J, and the request is not to share or spam the list. If you missed getting added to the roster and you'd like to be added, the link is in the agenda, and the Texas Elder Justice Coalition flyer, it was also attached if you need to send that to anyone that you are telling about the Texas Elder Justice Coalition. And if they want to know more, they are welcome to join the introduction webinar meeting on the 4th Tuesday at 2. Just email me and let me know. The summit sponsorship has gone well, as I mentioned earlier, and we're still working on creating funding for the future. Our social media is creeping up there a little bit, our followers, and we have the dates of the next meetings listed there. And then I'm also excited to say that I will present at the Aging in Texas Conference in June and the APS Conference in October. And we have 5 minutes left for any questions, new business, announcements, open mic. I believe Lindsay was going to share the Texas Elder Justice Coalition Summit flyer in the chat, and I will also email it after the fact. And Lindsay, go ahead.
I tried attaching it into the chat and it wouldn't let me.
Okay, I'll just email it to everybody afterwards. That's fine. Thank you for letting me know.
Yes.
Any other questions? There's a lot of links and information in the agenda, so encourage you to go back and check it out and share with your colleagues and other people who you believe should be involved or would want to be involved. And again, let's see, is Robert still on? Thank you again, Robert, for presenting. Anybody have any last thoughts or comments? I think he's off now. I don't see his name. All right, I flew through that last bit, but hopefully you felt like the presentation was worth it. It was a little bit of a lengthy presentation, but good content. And look forward to seeing you all in person June 10th at the summit.
Thank you very
Email
much.
me. Yeah, likewise. Yeah, thanks for being here. If anybody has any questions or suggestions, feel free to call me or email me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks
Dana.
all.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dana.